Good morning, Lisa. How are you?
I'm good, Jana. How are you?
Great, great. Well, this podcast today has been a long time, a lot of work leading up to today, a lot of paper trails, letters, emails, and research. So I think our listeners some may be in for quite a surprise to see what's happening with our children's education with today's discussion. So today we are going to be talking about the NCCA. The NCCA is, we'll talk about who they are. We'll talk about the consultations that have happened for junior cycle, the one that's happening for senior cycle, and how we strongly believe that the NCCA are completely sidelining parents in any of the consultation for our children's education. So there's quite a lot to cover. Lisa has done some tremendous work for the Natural Women's Council, doing all the back end research, submitting loads of freedom of information requests. I think you have how many in now, Lisa?
Well, with this one, we have a couple in, but it's probably more the initial request was quite detailed, and we're pursuing on that because we submitted an initial FOI request to the NCCA with regards to the junior cycle and the inclusion or exclusion, however you want to look at it, of parents. And we had 9 separate requests for information, and that's all been denied. So we're actually in with the information commissioner now, awaiting a hearing on that.
Great. So we can talk about some of those FOIA requests that you've done and then more to follow. So what we'll do, we'll start out with, for any listener who may not know who the NCCA is, I'm just going to put my screen on share. Let's test my early morning technical skills. Can you see that screen okay, Lisa?
I can, yes.
Okay,
perfect.
Great. Technology skill number 1 is passed. Okay, so who are the NCCA? Any of you can look up ncca.ie. They're the National Council for Curriculum and Assessment, and they work with learners, teachers, practitioners, parents, and stakeholders to develop research-informed curriculum and assessment. So it sounds very thorough on their homepage with actually who they are and what they're meant to do, but with our research, which we'll share with you today, including some emails we've sent and Freedom of Information Act requests, they do not involve the teachers, they don't involve the parents, and they don't involve the students. It seems like they work very closely with some activist groups, which are government NGOs, to push this agenda into schools, which we do believe that is sexualizing and indoctrinating our children. So this is who they are. So I'll ask the listeners, how many of our listeners today have you been involved in the consultation for either the junior cycle or senior cycle? So think about it. Have you been involved? Have you been invited? Well, I wrote an email to the NCCA this week, and I'll just share that email here on my screen. So I wrote an email very concerned that parent bodies, parent associations, and parents were not involved. Now, they sent this email, and I've sent a reply back, which I'll share. So I asked which national secondary parents associations were invited to the consultation and education stakeholders. Now they answered that the body that represents parents on NCCA structures, the National Parents Council was invited to participate in the meeting of education stakeholders on Monday, the 2nd of October. The full list of groups who attended this meeting will be published in the report on the consultation, which will be 2024. The next question I asked is, can you also, how have you been engaging parents in the senior cycle curriculum? Now, the NCCA states that they have engaged parents in consultations regarding the SPHE and RSE since 2018, as reported on their website. With regard to the current consultation on the draft senior cycle SPHE curriculum, the following provides a summary, which is not exhaustive, of efforts to promote awareness and modes of engagement for parents. So they go on to state that they're on their website. They said it provides a specific survey for parents, and the evidence to date shows that parents are actively availing of this method to share their views. Parents also have the option of sending a written submission, and also the NCCA website has specifically tailored information for parents to support them in gaining accessible and accurate information. Well, let's just take a look at that website, because I was on it earlier today to see if they'd made any changes on it and see how easy it is to find any information. Okay, so if I were promoting something to parents, and I'm no web designer, but common sense prevails and says, if you were promoting something to parents or teachers, what might you have on a website to show that it's happening? Maybe you mentioned, Lisa, like a banner at the top, right? Or a consultation happening, submit here, a big button flashing for parents to see. So if I go into the NCCA.ie website as a parent today and say, well, I want to feedback and submit a survey, where do I even look? Well, let's just say, okay, senior cycle, there it is. Now, under senior cycle, there's all these tabs here. There's no banner, there's no button to say submit here, we invite you to a survey. There's just all this gobbledygook. So let's say curriculum developments. I know it's there because I looked, took me a few tries. Curriculum developments. And then you have, again, loads and loads of information with no banner, no button, no click here, no we invite you. So under there, you click on this senior cycle, social, personal, and health education, SPHE. And there we have it. So it took 3 or 4 clicks to actually get into it. Now, the important thing when we talk today, we will remind parents that it's really best they don't submit the survey. The survey is like walking into a trap. And I'll show you the survey for the listeners so you can see exactly what we mean by this. So we encourage everyone to submit your own written submission and email it to the SPHE, and their email address is also buried in here because of course they want you to do their survey, but we will provide the email address. The survey, let's just take a look. So online survey for parent. Let's look at this lovely flowery survey that makes this new SPHE sound like the best thing ever, better than Ben & Jerry's ice cream. Okay, so participant details. As a parent, say, okay, we'll just say our post-primary, junior, or we'll say senior cycle next. Now look at this lovely language. Who wouldn't say yes to this? Senior cycle SPHE aims to empower students to become healthy, resilient, responsible, and empathetic young adults, nurture respectful and caring relationships, and prepare for the opportunities, responsibilities, and experiences of life now and beyond school. Wouldn't any mother or father want that for their child? That sounds fantastic, doesn't it? So it says, please tick whether you agree that this is a good aim for the senior cycle. Oh, of course. Yes, it is. So next. And then it goes on to state, please indicate how important you think each topic is. So, factors that influence health and well-being, positive mental health. Of course, those are all very important. Who's not going to say staying safe when out socially and, recognizing and coping with mental health challenges. And then we have, building healthy relationships, examining harmful attitudes around gender, understanding abusive and violent relationships, and sexual health. It's all very important. So as you can see, I won't go on any further because it's 8 pages long of this flowery language. It does not get into the detail. So unless a parent actually goes through the entire proposed curriculum changes in detail, looking at this, it would be very, very easy to fall into the honey trap of just ticking very important. And then the NCCA can say, look at the thousands of parents who think this is just brilliant for their child. So it's very much a trap. So I'm going to go back into the email. So that just shows on the email there, they said website. So we've already taken a look at their website there, and everyone can certainly form their own opinion. Social media, announcements were made on social media platforms at different stages throughout the consultation. So if we think about right now, we're in a cost of living crisis. Most families have both mummies and daddies working. And then after work, they're doing all the kid things and homework and playing and reading and cooking and everything else. Should the NCCA really rely on parents being on the likes of Facebook and Twitter to get their invitation to a survey?
And I suppose, Janet, to point out, and how many of those parents does the NCCA have its own social media page, and how many parents are actually on that if they do? So obviously details around that would be very important. So if they put out back in 2019, one tweet or one Facebook post, that's not really going to alert parents in 2023 what's going on.
Exactly. And the next way that they said they've informed parents is through print media, radio, and TV. Now, personally, I don't watch TV. I barely listen to the radio, and print media. I don't know when the last time I actually bought a physical newspaper. So again, how many parents are going to catch that little snippet that they may have put on the newspaper, radio, or TV? It might only be that one advert in the day. A parent may be working or with their children in the evening. And then the last thing, the next thing they said is the NCCA communication through education partners. The council is a representative structure and the members represent partners in education. So apparently the membership of the current council, published here, has been requested to use their communication channels to promote awareness of and engagement in the consultation. Well, I've spoken to hundreds of parents, teachers, and principals, and nobody I've spoken to was aware of this consultation. So I would ask the NCCA, exactly who are you communicating to in relation to this? What parties, what individuals? Focus group meetings. They said that they've organized focus group meetings in different locations across Ireland with the support of local school management. Now, again, I've not heard of any parent, teacher, principal, or student who's been involved in a focus group. And any of our listeners, you know, you can ask, was I invited? Was anybody I know invited? Because they're telling us they were. Or perhaps they did a focus group with a careful selection of a random sample to get the people they want on the focus groups, just to tick that box. And then how and when will parents be invited to the consultation? See above. So I submitted this back to them yesterday. Again, I asked them which specific bodies or persons were invited to the consultation. Did they involve representatives from the CSSPA, the ETB, NPA, Compass, or Community, or PA, CCS? These are all different parent associations, because we've been inundated, Lisa, I know, through emails, through social media messages and phone calls of people saying, I wasn't invited to this consultation. We're really concerned that parents are being sidelined. Again, I asked the NCCA yesterday regarding your engagement with parents. What if we're not on social media or watching TV? We might not hear about it. Focus groups, don't know anyone invited. So the fourth question is really the most important, and I'll make sure, hopefully they're able to give us an answer, or I'll be ringing them every day on this. Why would you not send this survey to schools to send to the teachers and parents to get a broad range of input? As a parent, for example, my children, our communication platform is called Aladdin. I don't know what different schools use different systems. Lisa, do you use Aladdin in your
Yeah, we just, well, my children's primary school are using Aladdin now. Yeah, that seems to be the new one.
Yeah, so every school has their own different system. So I get 3 or 4 messages some days, you know, on, you know, whether it's a charity donation event or an after school or a Halloween disco coming up. And recently we had in the past surveys to fill out on things such as digital literacy or disability services, or different surveys that come from the Department of Education. So the question is this: why would the NCCA not send this survey for parents to complete versus as they have done all the others? Why are they expecting us to hunt around on a website to find the information? You know, they really are, they've shown themselves that they don't want parents involved. So the NCCA, we've talked about who they are. We've talked about the lack of communication with parents. The junior cycle consultation happened it was opened on July 18th and went until the 22nd of October. Parents were not invited to that. And I think Gripped Media reported there were nearly 40, I think over 4,000 or 4,200 submissions from parents. And we can talk about your FOIA on that. Senior cycle, this is an interesting one. So we've had a lot of us pushing back on NCCA that parents are not involved in the consult. The closing date was originally, I think it was the 17th of October, that date. Now they emailed me yesterday and said that you'll be delighted to know that it's extended to the the 3rd of November. So it's a couple extra weeks, which is interesting. I don't know if that's from the complaints we've put in or just that they really do want our feedback. So Lisa, we've kind of set the stall out for the NCCA, who they are, the consultations that they don't want us. I'd like to kind of talk about some of the information, the hard work you've been doing behind the scenes with the Freedom of Information Act request. And I think for our listeners who may not know what an FOIA is, if you want to maybe just start with what is a Freedom of Information Act request and who can submit it?
Yeah, no, I don't claim to be an expert on FOI, and I've certainly got it wrong. So we're learning ourselves as we're going, but it's legislation that was enacted in 2014, I think, replacing some existing legislation. And I suppose in looking into it, I kind of questioned whether they would in 2023, actually, if we didn't have a Freedom of Information, would they enact it now? I suspect they wouldn't. My view of it is basically the idea behind it is the government us. So there should not be secrets from us, and we should have oversight as the bosses of what our employees are doing. You know, public servants are employees of the citizens, and this is a mechanism to find out if they're not, you know, being forthcoming in the public with what they're doing, how we can find out what's going on. So opportunity to ask questions, and what you need to do is the request must be in writing and it must reference the act. So Janet, just to say, I'm getting messages to say my internet's unstable, so I don't know if I'm breaking up on you.
I can hear you. You did freeze. You did a little freeze frame for a few seconds, but I could hear you the whole time, so it should be fine.
Yeah,
so
okay.
Yeah, that's grand.
So, and look, it might be worthwhile. I'm in the middle of printing out the act. It's almost 100, but I think it's important that people kind of know themselves. Look, it's there for us, and it is for citizens to use, and don't be shy and work away, and you need to put it in writing. It needs to reference the Freedom of Information Act. Every FOI body has on its website who you send it into. So there's a name there or an email address, very simple. And you put in your request and look for the information. And in the act itself,
well, Lisa, can I jump in for a sec?
It says that
Oh, can I just jump in? Is it just an email? So if I just, for our listeners, they just can send an email template, and as long as the information's there, they don't need to submit any form, just a simple template on it. Or
no, it doesn't need to be a template. What it absolutely needs to do, because I had a friend run afoul of this, it does have to reference Freedom of Information. They can ignore you. Now, they might answer your question if you don't reference Freedom of Information, but they're not, you know, held to the requirements of the
okay. I think you're frozen.
The government, and they have to answer my questions.
Excellent. Okay, carry on.
Okay now?
That's great. Yeah, you froze for a sec. So
look, just so people know, an FOI body in performing any function under this act shall have regard to A, and this is all chapter 2, access to records, section 11. The need to achieve greater openness in the activities of the FOI bodies and to promote adherence by them to the principle of transparency in government and public affairs. B, the need to strengthen the accountability and improve the quality of decision-making of the FOI bodies. Sorry, that's page 26. Now I need 27. Anyways, there's a bit, oh, there it is, 27. The need to inform, scrutiny, discussion, comment, and review by the public of the activities of FOI bodies and facilitate more participation by the public in consultations relating to the role, responsibilities, and performance of the FOI bodies. So like I'll say, facilitate more effective participation by the public in consultations relating to the role, responsibilities, and performance of FOI bodies. So look, that's the background. That's what the legislation is there for. So I think just to have people aware, is there a cost initially? No, the initial request, there's no fee. You don't have to pay. If your request is denied, or if you're not satisfied with the information you got, you can request within that FOI body an internal review. There is a cost there now. It is 30 euros. However, if you or a friend or family member or concerned citizen has a medical card, the fee drops down to 10 euros. And then if you're not happy with the response from the second internal review, you have the right to go to the information commissioner. I think you have 6 months from the denial. And again, if you have a medical card, that's only 15 euros. If you don't have a medical card, you're going to have to pay 50 euros for that. So, just keep that in mind. It'd be free. It's a bit ironic. It's freedom of information, but we have to pay for access, but it is what it is. So that's kind of the background, the purpose of it, and the cost.
Great. And Lisa, before you go into some of the specific FOIAs that we've done and some of the responses, I just want to, what I'm going to do is share the screen now with our listeners and just remind them of the Education Act as well. So I'm just going to share this here. Can you see the Education Act up there okay? Can you see that screen okay?
Jenna, you froze on me. Sorry.
That's okay. I'll keep going because I think it's your screen that's freezing, your internet, not mine. So I'll carry on. But
okay.
The Education Act here is, it states that in accordance with Section 9D of the Education Act of 1998, it is the school's function to promote the moral, spiritual, social, and personal development of students and provide health education for them in consultation with their parents, having regard to the characteristic spirit of the school. So this is really important. And before we go into the Information Act, the Information Acts that Lisa's done, the FOIs, is the whole consultation for SPHE or anything with schools must be done in consultation with the children's parents. So by implementing such a big change with SPHE, bringing in the gender ideology, bringing in the highly sexualized program, not only is it not done in consultation with parents, but regarding the characteristic spirit of the school. My 2 children go to a Catholic primary school. So is it in the Catholic ethos to be teaching such a highly sexualized program, gender ideology, and all of that? So this is on the IrishEducationAlliance.com. Under the opt-out letters, we encourage every parent to send the Board of Management letter, which goes to the principal and Board of Management, reminding them of their duties to consult with parents, reminding them of the Children First Act. So that letter should go to all boards of management. And then there's an opt-out letter, which I've sent to my school, to say, I don't want my children to be learning these topics here. Now, there are many opt-out letters floating around out there. I would not personally opt them out of the entire RSE and SPHE program, thinking that you're going to opt them out of this gender identity, LGBTQIA+, blah, blah, transgenderism, etc. Because we found out from our followers that they are threading this gender ideology into many different subjects. For example, one parent said that in a mathematics equation at the school, they used a chest binder, which for anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's when a girl decides she may want to become a boy and she uses a binder to bind her breasts. These are very dangerous for young developing bodies. They said, let's just say, Lucy has 20 euros. The chest binder cost 19. How much is left? So they actually threaded the gender ideology into a mathematics lesson. So I would highly recommend parents to submit the opt-out that's on the IrishEducationAlliance.com, which is topics. You can also add any of your own topics if you wish, but it's getting threaded into every aspect. So just wanted to throw the Education Act of 1998 out there for every parent that knows, who may not have known that the SPHE consultation and the lack of involvement with parents and schools is completely breaking the Education Act of 1998. So great. So you can carry on now with the freedom of information. If you want to talk about maybe some we've done, Lisa, that you've done on
Sure. And I suppose just to add in, that Education Act sits under the Constitution, and the Constitution makes us the parents, the primary carers and educators of our children. So, even if the Education Act doesn't exist, we are the primary educators. And just to throw out, in my daughter's secondary school, the school sent out a letter a few weeks ago talking about all the legislation that requires them. It's mandatory and they must teach this to the students, must. So it's on my list of things to do to come back in a written format, talking about why that isn't the case. And none of these bits of legislation actually trumps parents' rights. So yeah, Janet, so I think what we were talking about earlier is looking at the freedom of information request that we put in with regards to the junior cycle, to give parents an idea of what they're up against, and how little the NCCA wants them involved in any of this curriculum, and to inform how we go forward with the senior cycle. So basically what we requested of the NCCA, going back to March now, on the junior cycle, was we asked for anonymized copies of the 55 written submissions submitted by individuals in relation to the proposed change to the junior cycle. So I'm not sure who those are coming from, but they referenced in their report that they received 55. And I asked for all information, notes, etc., with regards to that. Anonymized copy of the 317 emails and letters submitted in relation to the junior cycle, and any information regarding that. Now, folks, there were, despite, I think this is absolutely amazing, despite this survey, this consultation effectively being hidden from parents, 4,353 parents found out anyhow and did respond to the survey. So bravo to those parents. And what I asked for was information that the NCCA have on what those responses said in the survey. I didn't ask for the actual, all the responses, but just the information regarding that. Now, they indicated there were 102 online survey responses received from teachers with regards to the junior cycle. And I was looking for information with regards to that, to see what the teachers said, because the NCCA in their report on the consultation claimed it was unanimous that all teachers that responded were for the new curriculum, 100%. It can't be true. We know it's not true. So we're trying to follow up on that, because it's not the case.
Yeah, that, just to reiterate, Lisa, that is that's a blatant lie by the NCCA, because on the Irish Education Alliance, obviously the Natural Women's Council partner with the Irish Education Alliance, along with Parents' Rights Alliance and the Lawyers for Justice Ireland. And the Irish Education Alliance has nearly 400 teachers and principals, and many of them submitted submissions, and we certainly know they weren't for this. So that's a complete lie.
You can see why they didn't want to respond there. So, and in fact, holding their toes over the fire, I specifically requested all information that they have to basically prove that there was unanimous agreement amongst teachers that the proposed course is an important step forward in addressing the needs of adolescents growing up in Ireland today. So I think, Janet, there's so much information we're throwing at parents right now, but I think that ties into the nature of the survey, that we would want to be very, very, very careful in responding to that survey. Personally, as a parent, I won't be responding to the senior cycle survey. I'll be writing my own response, because I think no matter what you write in that survey, it'll be used against us. And last question I asked was all information related to the decision not to create a parental stakeholder focus group or roundtable to consult on the proposed changes to the junior cycle SPHE curriculum. Now, what happened was the NCCA denied our request, gave us no information whatsoever, and advised that it would take them about 130 hours to respond. So they just simply didn't have the time. Sorry, you'll just have to trust us that we contacted parents and we did all that we could. And one of the things, I don't think I said it, basically I was looking for all the information on outreach, the cost of the outreach, how you outreach to parents, the campaign, radio campaigns, give me all your information on television, print, online media, what billboards, what radio campaigns NCCA did you engage in to let all of us parents know about this? So of course they did not answer that. So
Lisa,
just very
Lisa,
briefly,
Can I just jump
Yep,
in on
go on.
130 hours? I worked in multinationals for 20 years, and I know from a data management perspective, they should be storing, and I'm sure they do, all of the responses just stored on one little hard drive, which they could just download on a USB and send right out. It should take 10 or 15 minutes. So that 130 hours is just simply a cop-out for NCCA to not give us the information to prove that parents were sidelined. So that 130 is a load.
You're right. And not only should they have it, they put in the report on the junior cycle consultation that they did it, that they had it. So what they said was, let's see, they claimed that all data gathered from the consultation is anonymized and stored as digital files. So what's the problem? Is, why would it take that long? So what's also very interesting, and for people to know about the NCCA, they have their own policy that they are required to publish all of their surveys and consultations, because it is educational, because it is in the public. So we have a right to know. So they are violating FOI, I believe, by not responding. They are violating their own internal data distribution policy. And on top of that, they are also subject to legislation that is called open data, I believe, and they did not comply with that either. So really, on so many fronts, the open data directive was not followed. So under the open data directive, I argued, they needed to give this information. And they themselves state on their website that in particular data associated with NCCA research, needs to be made publicly available. So really what they've done is, in my opinion, is they're hiding under a provision of the Freedom of Information Act that allows organizations to say, take too much time. So they spent a lot of time coming up with the hours, the many, many hours they claim it would take to give information that we have a right to have. And I think the last thing I'll say on it is, very, very interestingly, the NCCA on their website, under the senior cycle provisions, amazingly have come out and said they have a legal obligation under the senior cycle to publish the data. So it's mind-boggling that they're fighting tooth and nail to hide all of this with regards to the junior cycle, but have come out and admitted publicly with regards to the senior cycle that they must publish it. So just to say, on page 1 of the online survey, which is what, Jenna, you put up just a short while ago, the NCCA state the following: the NCCA, as a public body operating under the Open Data and Public Service Information Directive 2021, is required to publish publicly funded research. All data from this survey will be further anonymized and aggregated before being published, and only made available after the final report on this consultation is completed. So to me, that was the biggest the biggest find. And when I was doing research on this FOI, if you said you had to do it for the senior cycle, why aren't you giving us the data for the junior?
Why do you think, Lisa, they're not giving the data? We obviously know it should not take 130 hours unless they had a snail in there trying to go through all the files manually. So why do you think they're declining it?
Because they didn't do it. All of my question, well, two things. With the requests around engagement, what did you do? How did you do it? They didn't do it. We know that. Secondly, like amazingly, and fair play to all the parents who did find out about this and who did respond, we know overwhelmingly they were negative, did not want it. And if anyone goes and looks at the report on the NCCA website, on the consultation, on the junior cycle, parents are the only respondents who were referred to in very negative terminology and disparagingly and dismissed. So they were very cagey about what they say in the report. They said that a subset of parents didn't seem very happy about it. What was a subset? Was it 1%, 10%, or was it 100%? So what they did is they gave quick little, well, you know, you can't count on parents. They have a divergence of views. Don't look over there and look over here. And we're going to tell you that all teachers and all students unanimously were for this. So I think they didn't engage, but despite that, over 4,000 parents came in and said, no, don't want it. And based on the timing of everything, they had this ready to roll out. We know it was ready to roll out for September. So they couldn't actually sit down under their own timelines and take on board what the parents said, or they chose not to. So I think that that's what's happened. And they're going to do it again for the senior
They're
cycle.
going to do it again for senior, and just for the time frame. So just for to remind everyone, the junior cycle consultation took place for the junior cycle, which the changes kicked in for September, just September gone, for the 12 to 15-year-old junior cycle. That was done the 18th of July to 22nd of October 2022. Yeah. Nobody saw that. No parents were invited to that. The senior cycle is going on. It was supposed to close mid-October, but after the letters we've sent and all the complaints we lodged, they coincidentally or not extended it to the, what's the new date? The 3rd of November. And I put that out on a tweet yesterday. So that's the senior cycle that's going on. Just to recap, parents, we would encourage you not to submit the survey. We showed the survey in the beginning of the call. Very flowery. It's saying, do you agree with healthy mental health for your child? Well, of course I do. So the devil's in the details. So where parents can go to find out the detail, which I'll bring that up on the screen right now. I'll bring up the senior cycle submission on a shared screen for everybody. 1 second. Just go to share screen again. Coffee's kicking in. No stopping us now. Okay, so on the Irish Education Alliance, can you see that screen okay, Lisa?
Yep.
So on the irisheducationalliance.com website, it has a tab called SPHE RSE Curriculum, and there's Senior SPHE Consultation. There's 2 different tabs, Senior Cycle written submission here, and then the email regarding submissions. Now, we sent a draft, the Irish Education Alliance, along with the Natural Women's Council, Lawyers for Justice, Parents' Rights Alliance. We sent a submission as well, but this is where you should be sending your written submission. So please email the completed submissions template. It says by Tuesday the 17th. Now we have in writing, they said the 3rd, to sphedevelopments@ncca.ie. Also, please send a copy to president.csspa@gmail.com so we can keep a copy of all submissions to the NCCA. So we're really creating that paper trail for parents to say, we actually have concerns with it. You can't hide it. And then what we can do again, Lisa, is after this consult, submit the same Freedom of Information Act request to say, show us your parent involvement for the senior cycle. So I'll be curious to see when they respond to my email today or whenever they do reply to the one I sent yesterday, when I asked the question is, why wouldn't you send a survey to the school to get out to parents and teachers to submit if you really, really want us to? Now, the only concern is if they send a survey, that's what parents will submit, which is the flowery one, the honeypot, you get stuck in it. They say everybody agreed. So our purpose is to get the awareness out, to get the survey in, but really I would do it as a written submission with concerns that you have. So it is on record. And then when we do the Freedom of Information request, that data should come. It shouldn't take 130 hours for them to do it unless they employ snails. So,
well, they've admitted they're going to do it, Janet. They've admitted they're going to publish this material for the senior cycle. And can I also mention the way that they dealt with the junior cycle? Organizations that submitted a written response were requested, will they agree to it being published? And of course they said yes. So there's like a 200 or 300 page document that has all the organizations that have come in and said yay or nay. But I am going to be, in my written response, I am going to be stating, I authorize you and request that you publish my letter here and put my name. I don't mind one bit. You know, and that way we're getting it into the public, because what they're doing is they're blocking us and not telling us what parents said so that they can change the narrative. And if we as parents send in a written email, stating our objection to it, and state very clearly, I expect this to be published. I want other parents to see parents, concerns. I think we should be doing it. I'll be doing it anyways.
Yep, that's great. That's great to get all this stored on file. And regarding the data, so it's with the Freedom of Information Act request that they've denied because it took 130 hours to get this file to us. It's now, who is it with now? The data commissioner?
So yes, so if you are not satisfied with the response you get from what they call the FOI body, in this case, the NCCA, you have the right to go to the information commissioner within 6 months and ask them to review the denial. So we did that, and I did contact the information commissioner this week, and it still hasn't been assigned an investigator to look at it. Now, they did do an initial review and determined that they would take on the matter. So they have agreed they will, but we haven't gotten a response yet.
And what's the next step? So I guess the question, this seems like the fact that they are not engaging parents, they're breaking the Education Act of 98, which comes under the Constitution. They are telling schools, some schools have said they were told they can't opt out of this, even though it goes against the ethos of the school. So it seems like this is being forced on our children without the consultation or permission from parents, teachers, and principals. It really sounds criminal, I guess, for lack of a better word, what they're doing. They're breaking laws. If, depending on how the data commissioner comes back, they may just say, sorry, we're on board with the NCCA. It's too much time and you're not going to get the info. But what other things can we do? I mean, how could we get a formal investigation going to actually, get these documents and absolutely prove that parents were sidelined and that this shouldn't be in schools? I mean, how do we make it a criminal case?
As I said, while we were chatting, I was printing out the 93 pages of the Freedom of Information Act. It looks like the next step would be a high court action. If we don't get satisfaction in the information commissioner's office, I believe we have the right to go to the high court. It'd be an absolute shame if it came to that, but look, I think we have the right to that information. We had a right to be notified. We weren't. Those who did find out voiced their opinion as the primary carers of our children, primary educators. That was swept aside. I'd say they were shocked at how many parents wrote in. They did not expect that, ignored, and they went ahead with the plan that they've had in place for years, which is to sexualize our children, bring in pornography, and teach our children that boys can be girls and girls can be boys, and that gender identity is the most important thing under the sun. I mean, just to highlight, important topics like science are now optional because we have to dedicate hundreds of hours to this nonsense over their secondary school term. So
I was shocked to see that was optional. Is that already in place for this year, 2023? So under optional, the document.
My daughter would have to put in a list of what she wants because hundreds of hours are dedicated to this. So every child should be entitled to science. So in my daughter's secondary school, every single girl said, I want science. Sorry, it's not available to you. But what is mandatory is this: pornography, sexualization, discussing consent around sex as if that is the only, thing to be discussed, and really isn't that for parents to talk about. And all the other nonsense. We need to get back to basics. We're going to have illiterate little, social justice warriors graduating from school.
And Lisa, it's not just science. I'm just pulling up a document while we're talking. One sec. I'm just going to pull up one while we're talking to show our listeners. So we learned that science is now optional, but also I believe geography, home economics, a couple of languages, as well as science and business studies. So you think about our children, they're going to get, I think it's 400 hours of this well-being, which is all about sexual consent. It's all about, you can be a different gender than you're born with, a boy, girl, neither, both. There's one book I have in my press back there that has a confused redheaded child scratching their head, looking really confused, saying, I'm non-binary. So promoting to our young children that they can be neither a boy or a girl. And I've said it before in different podcasts we've done, is that, you know, right now there's I think there was nearly 5,000 children on the mental health list back in, I think, February or March. We can be sure that that's grown and grown. And that's children in Ireland waiting up to 2 years for mental health assessment and support. 2 years. So we look at those over 5,000 children and you think, okay, in 5 years' time, if all these children in schools, right now it's junior cycle, next year senior cycle, and then 2025, it's the little primary kids age 5. And if they're all taught they can be a boy, girl, neither or both, and they're taught this highly sexualized, you know, education, what will the mental health crisis be then? You know, you think about, I did a podcast recently, or a while back, with Sarah Haboubi, and she had a really good point when we were talking, is that children are only certain in their lives of very few things. So they're certain of, most of them know who their mommy and daddy are, their grandparents, if they're lucky enough that they're still alive, and they're lucky enough to know if they have a sibling, if they do, and also if they're a boy or a girl. So failing those 4 things, who their parents are, what sex they are, and if they have a sibling, there's very few things in life that a child is 100% sure about. Everything in their life is uncertain, except those small amount of things. So if you pull the carpet out from under their feet on whether they're a boy or a girl, what might that do to them knowing who I am? Will it make them question everything? You know, if you question whether if I were to question whether I was a man or a woman, and I get to that level of, am I really a woman? Then everything in life can seem fabricated. Well, is everything a lie? If I don't even know what body I'm in, is everything a lie? Then you take out science, which teaches children facts and science, or geography, where they're from, or business studies. You remove all of that certainty, all of that critical thinking. You strip it from a child, and they're left with just the education on the transgenderism and sexuality. That's what they're going to learn in school.
Pornography, introducing pornography. That's key, isn't it? You know, but you can't say at this stage it's not intentional. And you certainly, when you look at the curriculum, understand why they don't want parents anywhere near it, because we have no vested interest. We only want to protect our children. And every parent reading the proposed curriculum, when you get past the flowery survey and get into the actual content, it will raise alarm bells.
Yep. I'm just trying to pull up the framework that Ireland has used, and you know, all of, I suppose, globally this is used, this framework. I'm going to share the screen because people, when I've talked about this on the street, when we're doing our leaflets, which for any listeners, through our fundraising, we were able to print off 200,000 of these leaflets, over 200,000, because every time we printed, the print shop gave us a few thousand extra to thank us for what we're doing. These leaflets went out to parents' hands, and you know, this is the confused little child here. So this is actually in the junior cycle here. It says there's the little genderbread person, forget about the gingerbread man, and it says gender identity is about how you see and feel about yourself as male, female, both, or neither, irrespective of the sex you were assigned at birth. And here's the poor confused redheaded child. I don't know if it's a girl or boy, because they're stating they don't know either. It says, I do not identify as being male or female. So this is what they want to teach our children in school.
Yep.
I do not identify as being male or female. You know, I'm okay. I'm okay with my 8-year-old daughter identifying as female, and I'm okay with my son identifying as male. I don't want them to be taught this in school. It's horrific. I'm going to share the screen and just show everyone where this is coming from on a global level, because it is quite shocking. Can you see that screen there, the orange boxes?
I can.
Okay, I'll shrink it down a bit. Okay, so anybody can do your own research and Google WHO, which is the World Health Organization, standards for sexuality education. So just pop that, anybody who's listening, into Google, WHO standards of sexuality. Now, it's many pages long, but I always go straight to page, I think it's 39. I could nearly memorize this thing at this point. So I'm going to go down to the matrix. Oh, a lovely name for that as well. So we'll go into the matrix on the far into the document. Okay, matrix. So right here, Sexuality Education Matrix. This is the education that the WHO are recommending for our children by age group. And this is what's used to build the framework for the sexual education here in Ireland, done by the NCCA and the Department of Education. So
Anna, can I just interrupt very briefly?
Yeah.
To point out to parents, because this one has slid in very quietly. There is a huge difference between sex education, which we are not opposed to at an appropriate age, and sexuality education. So what actually happened in the UN, where all this garbage is coming from, you won't have heard this, but loads of countries said, no, 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 no sexuality education. We won't allow it. But the UN said, oh, okay, withdrew the particular document they were trying to push through, and then quietly have gone back to pushing this sexuality education. So words are really, really important.
Really
so
good
when you
point.
see something, parents, and it's saying, oh, sexuality education, stop for a minute and go, do I agree? Do I consent to sexuality education? I agree to sex education. So they, they're using, terms to
confuse people and get
confuse people. Yeah.
Yeah. I was on a radio show a while back, and we were talking about the, the sexually explicit library books and how it's, they're really like more like grubby sex manuals being pushed in children's faces to fetishize them, things that age 12 should know nothing about at that age. Yeah. And one of the radio presenters said, I think it might have been Joe Duffy's sidekick or something, said, oh, so you want us to go back to the dark ages? You don't want children to learn sex education, gaslighting us to say, you want to bring Ireland back to those dark ages where sex is shamed. No, not at all. So really good point, Lisa. So sexuality, this is age 0 to 4. So the WHO, Department of Education here in Ireland, use this document. So sexuality, that's the word there. They want to teach age 4, enjoyment and pleasure when touching one's own body, early childhood masturbation, discovery of your own body and own genitals, talks about the enjoyment and physical closeness is a normal part of life. So that's age 0 to 4, and that goes on and on. We'll just scroll up to 6 to 9. So age 6 to 9, that's my little girl. She falls in that category. She still believes in Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy. It's going to talk to that age group about love, being in love, tenderness, sex in the media and on the internet, enjoyment and pleasure when touching one's own body, sexual intercourse.
Sorry, Janet, just to interrupt there, sorry, but they want to teach your little girl, this age group 6 to 9, about contraception.
Yeah, wow. Contraception. I don't want my 8-year-old to know about condoms and birth control pills at age 8. What's the age of consent in Ireland? It's over 17. So is it 17? 17, isn't it?
I think it's 17. Yeah.
And an adult is defined as 18. So they're teaching age normalizing being in love, contraception and sex from age 6 to 9. 9 to 12 talks about first sexual experience. So my daughter turns 9 in a few months. Again, they believe in the Tooth Fairy, Santa. Running through the forest. We were in the forest yesterday doing a nature walk and, finding acorns and leaves. And I cannot even imagine that little girl running through the forest, learning about her first sexual experience, gender orientation, and sexual behavior of young people and being in love, masturbation and orgasm. So that really, looking at my little girl who's 8, I don't want her to learn that in a few months. So I would encourage everybody listening, again, go to the document, Google it yourselves. Don't trust us. Do your own research. DYOR, do your own research.
Can you link that, Jana? Can that document be attached?
I'll pop it in the YouTube once we upload it. I'll put this in there because it really does shock everyone. People have said, oh, you must all be a bunch of conspiracy theorists. So that's, are you cranks? You can't believe you're actually talking about this being taught to children. And I think, I can't believe it's actually being taught either. But if you Google WHO standards for sexuality education, and I will share this in the YouTube clip as well at the bottom in description.
And it's very important, Janet, because that letter I mentioned that I got from my daughter's secondary school with about 2 pages of, why we must do that. It had links into the teacher material. So of course I went into the links, printed it out, and sure, they're quoting UNESCO, requires this. Folks, none of us voted for the UN. None of us voted for the WHO. They have absolutely no right to tell us what we must do with our children and what filth we must allow them to be exposed to. So, you know, people hear the UN and, well, aren't they the good guys? Well, if you look into them, they're a truly terrifying organization, as is the WHO, which is, you know, part of the UN. So you know, parents do need to look into it themselves. Don't listen to us. Go to because they're not hiding it, people. They're absolutely not hiding it. They're very proud that, you know, they are saying that children are born sexual and that sexuality education begins at 0. And masturbation is number 1 on the list. Turn those little babies into sexual beings. Why?
Exactly. Why is right. And I know the question that came in from one of our followers recently was, do we need to submit the opt-out letter, which is on the irisheducationalliance.com, the opt-out letter for this certain aspects of SPHE at the primary school level, because the changes were made to the SPHE program for junior cycle age 12 to 15. So someone said, should I submit it? My children are only 10. I said yes. And the reason why I would encourage every parent with a child in any age group to submit that letter is because even though this gender ideology being taught as a fact isn't officially in the SPHE until junior cycle, we have found it, and I'm going to share another screen here with everybody. We have found it in the Busybodies book. So I'm just going to share that here. Can you see that okay, Lisa?
Yep.
Okay, so the Busybodies book here, it's green and orange, and it does shrink it down a bit. It does introduce, you know, a lot of the stuff against sex education, puberty, that's normal, that's biological fact. What happens to the body, that's okay, because some parents may not talk to their children about things like menstrual cycles and growing facial hair, and when it happens, it could shock children. However, we get to introducing adolescence here. And this is a primary school. This book is used by primary schools. Now I was at the RSE at a free speech event, and one principal came up to me and said, I don't give that Busybodies book. Your information is false. You need to update it. You're scaring people, he said, with this leaflet. And I said, well, that's great. Your school doesn't use it, but many schools do. So it's up to every parent to do their own research and find out if this book is used by their own school.
Yeah, you're going to have protective teachers who are awake, and you're going to have activist teachers. Yes. You know, and not even active. They just think it's the right thing. Like, what I don't want is to create a teacher/principal versus parents. That's exactly what the powers that be want. We do need to work with them, as difficult as it might be.
100%. And we support teachers in saying no to this. You know, if
that's what we need to do.
We would ask any teacher watching this to say, okay, just visualize 5 years ago, before this all was pushed under the guise of kindness and inclusivity and diversity and rainbows, and forget about what you've been taught in the last 5 years. Just think, use your common sense. You're competent, you're a teacher, you're well trained, and you want to safeguard children. Just think 5 or 10 years ago, would you have wanted to teach this to students? Yeah. Had you not kept hearing kindness, inclusion, bullying, The answer for most is no. So if you look at page 41 of the primary school booklet, Busybodies, it says, gender identity is how we think of ourselves as a boy, a girl, neither, or both. So gender identity is a social construct. Gender identity is not biological sex. You're either born a boy or a girl. And you know, back to the stereo, you know, there are boys who are feminine and girls who are masculine, and that's okay. You don't need to be conforming to the stereotype, but in no way should we teach a child that gender identity is how we think of ourselves as boy, girl, neither, or both. That is a dangerous ground for kids, and it carries on here. Gender identity, small number.
It's introducing ideas.
It's introducing ideas
in their impressionable little heads.
Exactly. Yeah. So if I'm age, 10, so that this would be like a 5th class primary, that's about age, say 10. Some people who are transgender may want to live their lives as boys, some as girls, some somewhere in between, and some no gender at all. So 10 years old, learning this in that Busybodies book. So again, don't trust us, do your own research. But if you're a parent who has no problem with your children being taught you know, they can be boy, girl, neither or both. If you have no problem with what we just showed you in the busybody book, you don't need to do anything. Jog on. Don't worry about a thing. But if you are concerned, you have the power as parents under the Education Act of 98 and under the Constitution to submit that opt-out letter to opt your children out of topics that you're confused about. And from today's discussion here with Lisa and myself, you hopefully can see that the NCCA and the Department of Education are deliberately trying to sideline you as a parent. The state are deliberately trying to insert itself between you as the parent and your child. It's up to you whether you let that happen or whether you take control of what your child learns and sees as the primary educator yourself as parents. So hopefully people got to see, Lisa, from the facts you shared and the links we shared and everything of what's really happening. I think it might be worth us sending, you know, a copy of the FOIAs that you did. Maybe we could send a copy to
all. Link those.
We'll link those. And I think it might be good to send, there's also going to be another podcast that Lisa will be doing with Natasha from the Natural Women's Council, doing a deep dive into Belong To. So you'll learn more about how Belong To, a trans right activist group, is infiltrating schools with our public funds, giving your child surveys, giving parents surveys, asking the schools to apply for the quality mark, and also wanting to come in November 6th to 10th to do a stand-up week. So Lisa and Natasha are meeting this week. Is it tomorrow, Thursday?
Tomorrow, yep.
Tomorrow to deep dive into Belong To. But, you know, this is a Belong To has stated they're teaching, and we have a document which you'll learn about tomorrow, that teachers should lie to parents. So it looks like the Department of Education is doing everything possible to keep parents out of the equation, asking teachers to lie to parents, using our public funds to sexualize and indoctrinate kids. So I think we sent, I think what we should do is send a copy of those FOIAs to all TDs to show them that we are being refused information. So I think that might be a takeaway. We could send, I have an email list to all the TDs, ministers, and senators to show them all the information we're asking for that's been denied to us, which is covering it up. We also sent all the TDs, ministers, senators, secondary schools, and the press. We sent them a very detailed letter over the past week on our concerns with Belong To coming in schools. So I think they also need to know that the NCCA is not engaging parents and they're hiding that information. So we'll make sure we send maybe a copy of the FOIA details to all of our public representatives to show them what's happening as well.
Can I just say, and don't lose heart, we are gaining people every day, and politicians are coming on board. Journalists are coming on board. It's amazing. So look, it's overwhelming stuff. It's embarrassing stuff. Like, this is topics that we as adults don't want to talk about, you know, but we have to. And if we don't want to talk about it, why would we allow our children to? So I wouldn't want anyone to lose heart. Like, we're growing in numbers, and we, you know, we just cover the whole country. Atheists, very devout religious people, teachers, parents, lawyers, doctors, you name it. So we're just growing, and we need your voice. We need all parents to find that courage and understand that they have the right to speak up for their children.
That's really, really good point. And, you know, don't rely on our group of the Natural Women's Council. Lawyers for Justice Ireland has, I think there's 4 lawyers that do all pro bono work. Natural Women's Council has about 25 of us doing all volunteer work. Irish Education Alliance and Parents' Rights Alliance. We are very small groups. We get no funding other than donations from people who appreciate our work to submit things like the FOIAs and, you know, print off leaflets. It's all donation based. But, you know, it's very easy for a public servant or the NCCA to just get one email from us and just bin it. They push it aside and say, that's just one. So really the magic happens and the power happens and the change happens when thousands of parents rise up and say, I'm going to take 10 minutes to get that email done. All of our things, we have templates. It's a copy paste email job. You don't have to send it by post unless you wish to. You don't have to write the letter. Copy, paste, and send. And when they see thousands come in, it's a lot harder to ignore that. And then the other thing I would encourage you to do is It's very hard for people to speak up when you're a minority. People tend to feel othered. So for example, you know, I know in my own children's school, I was that unmasked mother during the COVID times, out in the fresh air, greeting my kids at the school gate with a smile. I was othered. I was one of those. And with this issue here, it's very easy to feel that you are othered and that you're left out and you're on your own. However, when you have those small conversations, and I had a good few of these last week in my own school community, when you have those one-to-one conversations, never underestimate the connection you can make and the power of that one conversation. So, you know, you're not alone. And maybe right now you don't have, I think, Lisa, you said this to me a while ago, is you may not have people standing with you, but there's a lot more than you know about standing behind you who also disagree with this coming in schools. So have those one-to-one conversations. You don't have to take, you know, you don't have to be pushy or, you know, stand out there with a, you know, a placard or give a big speech, you know, outside. You can just simply be having coffee and say, what do you think about the changes coming in school? And so usually people say, well, what changes are these? Well, what's coming to junior cycle and will soon be hitting senior cycle in primary is teaching gender identity as a fact, teaching boys and girls they can be a boy, girl, neither, or both. And usually that's all you have to say. You sit back and pause and people go, wow, that's really in schools. So it's, you know, that those small coffee chats or chats at the school gate have more of an impact than anyone can ever realize. So don't feel like you're alone when you get talking. Most parents actually feel the same way. And until you have those small chats,
they just don't know. They just don't
know. They don't know, or they feel like you may feel like you're being othered, you're excluded, you're on your own, you're just the fringe minority. But actually, when you have those chats, there's a lot more on your side. And you'd be surprised how many teachers and principals also have the same concern. So keep on talking. Like Lisa said, don't lose heart. We are making ground. Media is talking about it. Politicians, public representatives are talking about it. And we can't stay silent because we only have one shot at childhood to get it right. So I think that's a good place to end. I'll stop the recording and we'll get this uploaded for everyone. So I'll just hit stop now.